Okay, so if you remember last week we talked about some preliminary exercises you want to try to have your clients do before you start working into the single leg exercises like lunges and pistols if you're good enough for that kind of stuff. And we had Nancy as our example, and she clearly had some balance issues, right? So we're going to kind of regress a little bit and address some of those and show you some exercises that we can do to work you to where we started last week, okay? So the first one that you want to do is just simply have your patient or client balance on one foot, okay? And I like to start people off about 20 seconds and work them up to about 30 seconds, okay? And then once we get to that 30-second time point, that's when I start adding movement in, or adding some kind of challenge like offsetting them, like having them hold a weight with one side or the other, so that they again have a disproportionate balance and they have to accommodate to that, okay? The second exercise I like to have people do, this is just a basic 45-pound plate, okay? You don't need to get anything too terribly high, but you don't want it too short. So what we're gonna have Nancy do is stand with one foot on the plate, and then all she's gonna do is try to balance her hips out. So she's gonna push into the plate, raise her hips up, okay? And we have you come up and hold for about 2 seconds, long enough that you know that you have control, and then draw back down, okay? And on this exercise, you would want to have anywhere from 12 to 15 reps. Okay, so for our third exercise, you're going to want to have your patient or your client laying down on the floor. And so what we're going to do now is work through the 4 Cardinal Planes here. We're going to have Nancy just raise her leg straight up, doing a straight leg raise. And on this, you want to make sure that your client is raising their leg, not just swinging it up and down, utilizing momentum, that it's an actual activation exercise here. You also want to make sure that we don't have turning in or out of the toes so that the hip joint is staying in its closed pack position. Good. All right, now we'll have a roll to our side, and now we're going to do hip abduction. Okay, so now we're focusing on the hip abductors here. You want to make sure that the foot stays flat. Again, go ahead and raise your leg up. Okay, and again, making sure the toes aren't turning out, because then we're activating something else. You also want to make sure that their body position stays vertical. You don't want any rocking forward or backwards of the hips, because then again you're activating something else. Okay, again a controlled motion, not swinging. Okay, and then the third part of this exercise, we would have Nancy roll back over to this side, but for this sake we're just going to keep her here. You would cross the leg over. Now we're going to work the hip adductors. Okay, and so again raising the ankle up, making sure the foot stays flat, keeping the body vertical. Good. And then the final one, we would have her roll to her stomach, and then we're doing just straight hip extension. Okay, so here you want to make sure that it's glute activation, that you're not overcompensating with the lower back or recruiting the hamstring in order to raise the leg. You want to focus just on the glute. Okay, push the heel towards the ceiling. Okay, so for if you have your client having issues like you did last week, where they're having a little bit of balance issue from the very beginning, before you progress them on to the next exercises, we would start with these 3 exercises. Having them do just time balance, having them stand on a short object and doing hip activation, and then having them do the 4 Cardinal Planes here and working hip activation.